What's up, everybody? It's your boy Montoya Smith, aka Black Socrates. I am your mental activist, and welcome to episode 9 of Politically Conscious. I got my boy and political consultant Emille Bryant blacking this thing with me. I'm trying to get our brother Shelley Wynter on, so hopefully he'll join us soon. But while we're trying to get our brother on, if you will, if somebody's just now tuning in to us, again, we go by Politically Conscious. We always our motto is basically, if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. And so, if you will, Emille, dig specifically into your political consultant background, because I want people to understand why we are a subsidiary of Mental Dialogue. For those who know me for that, right? We've always stayed away from politics for the most part on that show, but politics, as our brother Leo Smith always says, if you don't get into politics, politics will get into you. And so it's always something that I've understood was very important. I personally took it important, but because on Mental Dialogue, we specialize in having hard conversations, and we actually like to dialogue and talk to one another. With politics, people rarely talk to each other. People just yell at each other, right?
That's right.
So I say all that to kind of just set up and say, I've always understood the importance of politics getting into me. I never wanted to get into me. I wanted to understand it, and I've always understood it. Well, I said, you know what? Let's specifically talk politics with people who are willing to actually dialogue through politics in a very real way. And so you are one of the political consultants. I throw you on the left, even though you don't claim it, right? That are willing to have a discussion with both sides, to have real dialogue, hence Politically Conscious. But give them a little bit of your background, and hopefully we can get Shelley on this thing soon enough.
For sure. So I am a military veteran, United States Air Force. And after I left the service, I found myself as a consultant of many things and was brought on to help with a congressional campaign for the congressional run and for the campaign in 2016. And I wrote speeches and managed a candidate's PR for that campaign. It was unsuccessful, but that got me into other consulting, where people would call me and ask me questions about how they might run for a candidate, how they might want to be a senator or a congressman, or even for some mayor, county commissioner. Those positions allowed me to see the inside and sometimes ugly underbelly of political campaigns, and help me understand how to be a better consultant overall.
No, I absolutely appreciate, again, your political acumen. I am a philosopher and historian, if you will, but I understand a lot of the politics of history. And so what we're going to do, we're not going to keep the people waiting. Hopefully our brother Shelley is okay. And he's transitioning from one show to another, so sometimes maybe he got caught up in that. And so hopefully we'll get him on, because, again, our goal is to have a balanced perspective. And so we've had to do shows, without him before, whatever. So if we have to, we will do that. Although that's not the goal here, because we want to talk about what's oncoming, right?
Right.
Today's conversation, Trump's oligarchy or not. And I want to talk about it in a very real way, because unlike both of you who are really up on what's happening in politics, again, I pay attention. I definitely care more about what's going on locally than nationally, if you will. But we just come off the heels of this election, and President-elect Trump has made himself known in a big, major way coming into this thing, almost as if you will, he's influencing the government in a sense without the position, because let's be honest, Biden is kind of in the closet, if you will. And we assume that's somewhat, I'll make the assumption, I don't know if everybody's making this assumption, but we'll assume it's somewhat related to maybe some of the health condition things that we kind of saw in the event of why he actually kind of stepped down, if you will, and gave Harris a shot at the presidency, if you will, and it's probably due to maybe some of that. And so I'm not so necessarily surprised, even though I know in the media it's highlighted as some type of major detriment. And again, I'm not saying that it's not. I personally think it's related to what we were already seeing, if you will. And so because of that, I think it actually puts President Trump-elect out front even more. And a big part of it is there this oncoming oligarchy coming based on his, what is it, the Doge? Is that how, or what are people calling the DOGE now? What are they nicknaming it Doge?
It's like the coin, Dogecoin, right? So it's Doge, right?
Right. So having Elon Musk and a Vivek Ramaswamy, if you will, head up the government efficiency Doge. It's like, is there this oligarchy coming into play? And so that's the narrative that keeps being pushed. And so I wanted to dig into that propaganda. So what I'll do, Emille, I'll just kind of get your take on this onslaught that we're seeing in the media of this potential oligarchy running our government. Just what's your personal take from your perspective on this media push for this potential oligarchy that's coming?
Finally, somebody said it out loud. We've been knowing this for decades. This isn't new. The oligarchy was rated by Princeton University in 2014 study as the U.S. was rated by a 2014 Princeton study as an oligarchy. That was published by the BBC. That study has been around. That study is not new. It was not based on anything that was groundbreaking or revolutionary. The fact is that the United States has been an oligarchy for a long time. It's just levels of oligarchy-ness, if you will, that people need to look at. But being controlled by corporate interests, I mean, when was that not a thing? We can go back to the founders of this nation, and almost all of them were very wealthy men, and almost every one of them wanted to expand their empires. The largest distillery in North America was run by one each George Washington. So to say that America has not been some form of oligarchy since its founding would probably be less revolutionary than saying that, all of a sudden, now that the two billionaires are going to tell us how big our Social Security check should be, that's not going to change. That doesn't change much in terms of the truth. The fact is that the Doge is just another example of very well-heeled people making decisions for the rest of us that will benefit them primarily more than anyone.
So I think I hear you saying business as usual. I actually, will say I agree with that, if you will, and in a sense, love that perspective. And so to a degree, some of the terminology of it being thrown out is really some political positioning, right? To kind of put a specific light on the oncoming, if you in a sense are the opposition to Trump or whatever. Some of it's just in a sense just being used to highlight it as if it's unique. But I will say in my lifetime, I haven't heard the word used so much. And so to your point, although from its beginning, our country, right, from its beginning has in reality been such, the word has not been used a lot. And so again, that brings out that highlight. So what we always do on this show, if you are a first-time listener, we listen to other political cuts from around the media, if you will, and kind of, again, dig into it from a politically conscious perspective. And so I'm going to start this process, just so y'all know, Emille has not seen this clip. So this is his actual reaction to what I'm about to play. And we'll just kind of continue through the dialogue with these clips to kind of delve into what the media is kind of putting out there and this reality or not of this oligarchy that we're supposedly about to come under, if you will. So let me play this cut and get your perspective, brother.
I think it's really important that we lay out what's happening here, because this is how a democracy vanishes. But I think it's also equally important to talk about why Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and all of his billionaire friends are engaged in this very coordinated early attack, even before he's sworn in, to try to intimidate his political opposition and bully the press. And the reason they are doing this, the reason that they are trying to suppress dissent, is because they are preparing to steal from us. Donald Trump and his billionaire buddies want to be in charge of government so that they can make themselves more wealthy at our expense. They want government contracts. They want to privatize government programs. They want to get bigger regulatory breaks. They want lower taxes. Donald Trump and his billionaire cronies want government to serve them. But they know the only way they get away with that is if no one holds them accountable. So in order to steal from us, they have to silence political opposition, intimidate activists into submission, and try to get the press to fold. If they do that, then they can get away with using government as a mechanism to enrich themselves.
My first thought, Emille, kind of to your initial point, is I don't know, especially in the last 20 years, maybe 30, but in the last 20 years, I don't know any point in which the majority of people who got into politics didn't do exactly what he just said. And I would say to include himself, because there is a significant difference, especially in the last 20 years, of how, in a sense, how rich you will be after serving in Congress, whether it's Democrat or Republican, whether it's House or Senate, of how wealthy you will be thereafter. And it's significant in the last 15 years. 30 years ago, you might enter at a certain wealth amount, and you may not be significantly different after a 4-year term, if you will, right? Like that was the reality of serving our country. You didn't automatically get wealthy by being in one of those positions. That and you could see that as a true and definitely 30 years ago. But in the last decade to last 15 years, if you somehow got your coffers right, won an election, even if you squeaked it out barely, and you only get to serve one term, you will walk away of not just a millionaire, but a multi-millionaire. So I'm just kind of highlighting, as much as this one congressman is calling out the future of this current thing, he's living that reality too. I just kind of want to just really, really pinpoint that. While we may see politicians do as this guy, I'm not for or against him. I'm just saying that's the reality of the position now. And that, I think, has to be considered as we now usher in this constant term of oligarchy. And he's highlighting that Trump and his group is preparing to steal from us. And I think they all do. And it's not just to say the government's all bad, but I want to understand, do you see a distinction in what he's saying versus what I think most of them do?
Well, so first, let me go to Quiver Quant. Quiver Quantitative is a website that I follow that helps me understand who's doing what, because they track all of the congressional net worths. Okay. So I looked at Chris Murphy's net worth. When he came into Congress in 2013, his net worth was around $300,000. And now his net worth is $1.34 million. That's on paper, right? So I'm sure it's higher than that when you start looking at his off-book stuff. So his net worth times 4 in 9 years, in 11 years, excuse me, right? So 400% return on investment is pretty good, right? For over an 11-year period. I mean, I think many of us would like to see that, especially given that his annual salary is only $174,000. So yes, we know that. And so the part of this that I think people are reacting to is the fact that it's just so open. It's so conspicuous. And if there's anything that the wealthy did prior to 2016 was that they tried to camouflage their, I won't say theft, I'll say the system works exactly as designed. They designed a system that allows for them to accumulate wealth faster than the rest of us. That system design is working perfectly, but it was camouflaged under a lot of things that we call capitalism and, freedom and liberty and all that sort of stuff. But in my opinion, as I see these people sort of take the camouflage off, what you're seeing is the fact that a billionaire that could contribute $277 million minimum to a presidential campaign, and he did that not over years, he did that in 4 months. He contributed $277 million in 4 months to the winning campaign. To have that kind of uncamouflaged money influence people's decisions, and then the reward for that is he gets appointed to the Doge. I mean, it starts to smack of something that people have been feeling, but they couldn't see because it wasn't in their face. Now it's in their face. So yes, Senator Murphy's going to call it out as stealing, but it's been going on for a long time behind a net. And now that net is down and you can see it clearly and people go, oh, wait a second. Now, for some people, they want that. They want these billionaires to come in because they feel like they are so good at running their businesses. They could run America, and America for many people is a business, but the American government is not. And the American government has a different mandate than a business does, which is to make money. Business makes money, government serves the people. So the question that people are seeing unmasked, right, is not if America is an oligarchy, but how do we prosper within it?
Great question. Let's go to another clip. We'll keep this thing running. All right, here's another clip from Elizabeth Warren. I'll say I chose this clip just based on how she's kind of positioned herself politically. I would say, as much as I just highlighted, they all go in to get rich and that type of thing. She's kind of positioned herself as still for the people, right? Just willing to run as an independent and highlight, in a sense, to your point, how to keep government in doing what it is supposed to do, because as you just said, the government itself is not a business. So I picked this clip from her, not knowing that that's what you would say, but I think it's just perfect to highlight the context of who she is for those who may watch and don't know much about her. She's kind of positioned herself as someone who's always still wanted to make sure that government was for us as the people. That's how she's positioned herself, and I would say that's a fair assessment of her. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that before I play a clip of her talking about what she sees currently.
Here is this man, richest man in the world, who has multiple companies. So he's got Tesla, the electric car maker. He's got X. He's got Neuralink. He's got SpaceX and a handful of other companies. Those companies are directly involved with the United States government. Millions and millions of dollars worth of government contracts, millions of touch points where there are rules that will affect those companies, right, like a $7,500 rebate for electric cars, investigations that are currently ongoing into the practices of each of those companies and, in some cases, into Mr. Musk himself. And here he is whispering into the ear of Donald Trump. So what is he whispering? Is he whispering, here are ways to help the American people? Or is he thinking through ways to make those companies richer, to back off the regulators, or to end any investigations into his work? This is conflicts of interest at a level that we have never before seen in this country. And it is critically important, first of all, that we call it out, and second, that we start to push back and say no. The American public has a right to know who's giving this kind of advice to Donald Trump.
So this is when, as far as Donald Trump had to publicly, well, maybe he didn't have to, but he did, from what I understand. Again, you know more of this stuff than I do, but even he pointed out publicly, Elon is not running the government. Like this is, you know what I'm saying? Like this surge of this conversation has gotten to this point. But the thing is, what we've always highlighted, and most of us have always understood, that Trump himself typically is the master of perception. But in this case, he's almost had to defend the perception of Elon hovering, if you will, over the cabinet, 277 mil that we know publicly, right? In 4 months, you just highlighted, to actually a position in the government. And Elizabeth says, hey, as you said, Emille, we're just kind of bringing it to the light. But Senator Warren is saying, hey, this may be a new level.
Oh,
this may be a new level.
I believe it's a new level. Don't get me wrong. Again, I think the camouflage is off. But I also think that you didn't see the result. Like, for instance, if you go back to 1973, we were talking about healthcare, and we went to 1973, the HMO Act, which was signed by Richard Nixon. Mr. Kaiser of Kaiser Permanente had a hand in helping write that act. And although Kaiser Permanente,
it wasn't Kaiser Sose.
I know, right? It feels like it, doesn't it?
He moved like Sose.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so even though the Kaiser Permanente didn't prosper initially from that law, over time it sure did. And so did many other HMOs, which were not really a thing until that law created the room and space for it in federal law. So this is the kind of thing that we've seen before, except it was just masked. And so when you have someone give that much money in that compressed time, and then flip as soon as it's over. There's a new Department of Government Efficiency. Now, let's be very, very comfortable with the language of department. A department is something that's chartered by law, and the Department of Government Efficiency isn't chartered by law. There are councils within the government, and lots of councils exist. One of them is the Council of Economic Advisors. The president appoints people to help him sort of see into different segments of the economy, different segments of industry. So there are lots of councils that the White House manages. This is one of those in that context. The problem is that you watched Elon Musk, before President Trump said a word, you watched Elon Musk blow up a continuing resolution that was negotiated in good faith by both parties in the Senate and in the House. So it was a bipartisan continuing resolution. And as soon as it was released, Shadow President Musk said, I don't like it. It's got to go. And immediately the deal's blown up, and it goes from 1,500 pages of highly negotiated issues to less than 100 pages, which got voted down. Boom. Nobody liked it. In fact, that's one of the reasons why President Trump had to say something. So he chimes in after Elon Musk and says not only what he said, but change it so that I don't have to deal with the debt ceiling anymore. Right. And the debt ceiling has been negotiated over time, and people can look that up and see how under the Trump administration, the Republicans who were in charge of Congress just raised it without really any fuss. As soon as the Democrat came in charge, the Republicans were like, oh, no, the debt's getting too high. We can't do it. So it's been very much a political football in that way, where he's throwing his 2 cents into Elon Musk's input. So this is where you were saying the master of public perception may have been outmastered by somebody who's doing just as good a job as he is in mastering public perception. And in fact, may have beat him to the punch, because that negotiated CR would have given him a little bit of breathing room as the president to come in with a new Congress and figure out how they were going to negotiate the first real budget. By the way, America has not had a proper budget for all of fiscal 24, and we're in fiscal 25. The government's fiscal year starts October 1st through September 30th. There was not a proper budget for 2024, which is why we had 2025, which is why we have continuing resolutions. So this nation is operating under these continuing resolutions, meaning a lot of things that should get done aren't getting done because the budget isn't being properly negotiated in good faith by both parties, where a budget can be signed by the president. So we have yet another stopgap measure, which means some things that should happen cannot happen, and that may benefit one party or one group within that party more than another. But the problem is that the business of government is at a standstill while we have these issues of perception. Who's in charge? One person says, I don't like it, and the deal is off. When in fact, it took weeks for the Republicans and Democrats to negotiate in fairly good faith something that would have gotten the government through March or through February, so that there could be at least some peace in terms of getting through the inauguration and the new Congress sworn in before everybody has to hit the ground sprinting at literal full speed. So the fact is, the master of public perception was out public perceptioned.
Wow. Great perspective. Just hearing your perspective. You made me think of something, and this is not directly related, but I just want to add this context because it's just trying to connect the dots, right? And so when you just broke down, we haven't had a proper budget for all of 2024, something that I was unaware of. But as I hear that, and I don't think these things are related, but I think people will relate these two. So I just want to hear your perspective on this. But when you say the government hasn't had a proper budget for the all of 2024, and this was kind of going to be that resolution, and it happened the way we just talked about, how do you connect the government itself not having a proper budget, but at the same time we've had a successful economy? I know those are not directly related, but I think people can do that, right? Like when you break down, when you say on here there hasn't been a proper budget for all of 2025, that just off the top of my head, I can make an assumption here. It sounds like, oh, the Biden administration is failing at something once again, but then so people can connect it to, if you will, the narrative of having this terrible economy. But we've pointed out on this show a couple of times, Trump's about to inherit a great economy. So I'm not saying I'm connecting the dots directly, but I can see how, you know, somebody hearing for the first time the government hasn't properly done something. So now it sounds like, hey, Trump will come in and just fix everything. And I'm not for or against either one. I'm just talking about the perceptions and weeding through this propaganda to make sure that we don't get further propaganda that takes us away from what actually is happening, if that makes sense.
It really does. And I hate to make this seem so petty, but it is petty, right? The business of government has within it a lot of wins and losses for each political party and each political incumbent, right? So we have to be willing to understand that there's a push-pull in terms of negotiating the budget. Here's what's funny though, right? So you get a Build Back Better bill, you get a Chips and Science Act, you get an Inflation Reduction Act, you get all these different acts, many of which, let's say a large portion of the Republicans did not vote for, yet they're going to go to their district or their state and say, look at all the money I brought you, when they didn't actually support the bill that brings the money to their state or district. So now you have this perception problem where you have people taking credit for something they didn't vote for or sponsor or write or do anything with. So now we have this conversation about the budget in that light. This is the problem we're seeing with the budget. People want to reduce the deficit, but they want to do that on the backs of things that are not discretion or that are called discretionary funding, right? The money that America can spend however it chooses.
Okay.
That money, like you have some must pays and then you have some discretionary pays. And so the must pays, like interest, we have to pay our interest every year. But the discretionary stuff, that's the stuff like SNAP and veterans health care and some other things like that. That money can be spent in multiple different ways. And so now you have people jockeying to spend that money and they don't agree that that money should be spent. One, they don't agree it should be spent at all. And two, they don't agree how it should be spent if they are spending it. So now those fights, they accumulate over the year and a budget doesn't get done. Well, the government's going to run out of money at some point, and when it does, it has to shut down non-essential services. And there's a group of people in this country who believe that the government is too big and needs to be smaller. So by shutting down those non-essential services, we can figure out what can't be funded in the future. I don't always agree with those people. I understand why they would say what they say, but here's the rub. This is the part that I think a lot of us are missing in the conversation. Who is most affected by the government not running effectively, and who benefits the most by the government not running effectively? When you start looking at those two, here's what you find out. The people who benefit the most from the government not running effectively happen to also be the wealthiest Americans. And the people who benefit the least from the government not working effectively happen to be the poorest Americans. So now who has the loudest voice in Congress? Almost never do poorer people have a loud voice in Congress to advocate for them outside of their representative or senator. On the flip side, wealthiest Americans have lobbyists, they have direct campaign contributions, they can avail themselves of every tool poorer Americans can, and they can add to it an entirely different toolkit that can influence policy. Hence,
the oligarchy we've always been under since day one of our government, to your point, if you will, by design. And I hope a little later, I want to get into the dialogue of that design from a historical standpoint, because I think sometimes when people hear that, it kind of makes them less willing to be involved and do their part, if you will, because, oh, if it's just run by billionaires anyway, why should I care? So I definitely want to have that dialogue at the end of the show, if you will. I want to actually share the screen. I'm not good at this, but let me share the screen. This time it's just something I want to show everybody. So we're not looking for any video. So let me share this screen. This was something our brother Shelley, getting hate that he's not on the show with us. Hope everything's okay with him. But he had put up on his page. Thought it was just a kind of a joke, but I thought it was appropriate for today's show. So hopefully let me know in a second here. Are you seeing my screen? All right, here we go. I'm about to hit the share button now. Do you see my screen?
It just came up. Yes, sir.
All right, perfect. Let me show this. This is a pretty funny meme that I thought was pretty funny. And we, if you don't know, Shelley is our MAGA advocate on the right, if you will. And so this is something he said, Merry Christmas. And let me see if I can make it bigger. Hopefully, I can make it bigger for people to see. And I'll read it real quick. But can you see that? It just says former part-time McDonald's fry cook donates his next 4 years' salary, $1.8 million, to support homeless veterans. He starts his new job in January, and is clearly President-elect Trump, if you will. If you remember the one time that he actually did the fries at McDonald's, and so they made this into a meme. I think this is actually pretty funny. Have you seen this one?
I have not seen this one. This is good.
Yeah, this is good. But I thought the context, again, I hate to not have Shelley on the show with us to give his perspective on it. But the context that I thought was valid for the show, we just talked about perception, right? Trump being the master of perception. And so I assume this is a very real thing. I didn't look it up. So I assume and wouldn't be surprised if he actually plans to actually do this. And so, in fact, if he is doing it, I think this does add to the perception that would negate how it looks right now, meaning I've taken the position, I'm doing well enough, I don't want to take any of your money, I want to help the veterans. I think this is a very smart play if in fact it is true. And I know, Emille, you probably know better than I do whether he's actually planning to do this for real or not. And I assume so, even though it was put in a joke format. So definitely correct me if this is just a joke. But in the event that it's not, I think this is a valid perception that goes against, to a degree, not fully, but to a degree, this idea that our government is being run by oligarchy based on his willingness to, in a sense, do something that no president has done. Again, correct me if I'm wrong about the actual factuals.
So I haven't seen that he's planning to do it as a credible and from a credible source yet, but okay. Let's go back to his past, and I'm sure he's going to do the same thing again as a master of public perception. Why wouldn't he? But the fact is that, $400,000 a year is peanuts to him because he has a multi-billion-dollar empire, the Trump organization, that he hasn't put into a blind trust. I mean, let's be 100% comfortable with the fact that if you're going to have a multi-billion-dollar organization and then be president, unless it's in a blind trust, something that you do not control and therefore cannot see how your decisions as president would affect that business, you run the risk of rightly being accused of making decisions that would benefit yourself. Now, for a lot of people say, well, he's betting on himself. Why is that bad? And I would say in the main, it couldn't always be bad. But the fact is that he's profiting from decisions that the general public can't see. And that is where I have a concern with all of Congress, with all of our decision makers being able to trade on information that's not accessible to the rest of us who are trading on the open market. Right. So when you see that, then you're seeing what looks like an oligarchy working on behalf of itself. That's the public perception, right? That even though he's giving away $400,000 a year, the Trump organization, Trump media by itself might be worth up to $8 billion by the time he leaves office. So he'll be making back 100-fold what he is giving up in terms of a salary when he, by 2028, when he leaves office, or 2029, when he leaves office. So I'm not willing to give him a pass because he's being generous with the cash that the presidency offers. I would prefer that was his main source of cash, because then I would know where that money is going in terms of how it's supposed to be used, which is to sustain the president. Lots of presidents were rich before they came into office. None of them this rich, where they had a multi-billion-dollar organization like President-elect Trump does. But let's be clear, most of them either set aside their businesses and kept them separate from the business of government, or put them in a blind trust altogether. I'm not saying that it was perfect. There were lots of presidents who had their brothers involved in business that they, like President Carter got in trouble with his brother, Billy Carter. And there's lots of people who've done that. So it's not a very clean, perfect break. But what I'm saying is, I am not distracted by the red herring of him giving away his money. What's funny is, one of the years that he gave away his salary, he gave it to the Department of Education, which he now wants to abolish. So it's just funny that these things are more about public perception than they are about actual, loss of control over his empire or his fortune, where he would be subject to the same forces of the market that many of us would be forced into for our 401ks.
Now, again, love those details because at the end of the day, as much as we say, if you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. I want to be clear. We understand that propaganda works. We're just having you come and listen to us in the event that you want to have a better understanding of said propaganda, if you will. Got our brother Shelley. Oh, you had it. Turn it back right on the way you had it, Shelley. Yep, there you go. About to bring you on this thing.
My man, I apologize. Man, hey, well, Merry Christmas. Man, let me tell you something, y'all. I got off the air at 12, and I said, okay, I got to do this thing at 12:30. And then the wife gave me a Barnes & Noble gift card for Christmas, and we're going away. So I went to Barnes & Noble. I got in the car, and I said, oh, it's 5 after 1. I messed up. My bad, man. My bad.
Yeah, you love books, brother. That's one thing about you. Just in case, if you are a regular listener to the Shelley Wynter Show, you just found out why this brood knows so much. He got lost in the books, man.
Man, I got lost in sending me to Barnes & Noble is like sending me to the Starship.
No, it is what it is. It is. Yeah, I don't forgive you, but you're here now, so it is what it is.
So I apologize.
So cool. All right, I'm gonna to be fair to you, I just showed something to the on the screen. I'm gonna share with you and let you give a quick take, and then we're gonna get into one more cut and keep this show moving, if you will. I just showed it, but I want to get Shelley's take because I stole this from your page, so it's only right that I show it again. And we're highlighting to give you a little context. We've obviously been talking about this concept of oligarchy, and Emille pointed out from the very beginning of the show, if we're honest, from day one, from George Washington until now, we've always been an oligarchy. And that's just the short version of what he said, just to give you a little context moving into this not video, but this meme that was on your page. So let me share the screen again and get your reaction. We just highlighted with this meme, we were wondering whether this was a good or smart move, if it's actually true, by Trump. So let me share the screen again and get your reaction to it, Shelley. All right, 1 second, y'all. I'm getting pretty good at this running this thing now, brother. I did pretty good with the last one, didn't I, Emille?
Yeah, you did. No, this is it right here. We don't
take me too long to get there.
Time. You got the time.
Here we go. So we just finished talking about this meme that was on your page, Shelley, and I asked Emille, and I'll let you answer the same question. I thought this was a smart play, if in fact it is true. Emille said he doesn't know if Trump actually really plans to do it. He hasn't found a credible source saying such, but we would not be surprised if he plans to do it. We thought this one was a funny meme, so I know obviously that's why you put it on your page. But we highlight, in fact, if it is true, it's a smart move in light of this quote unquote ongoing oligarchy that's being pushed in the media, that this is actually a smart move. He may not have thought of that, but this seems like a very smart propaganda play from my perspective. Your thoughts, brother?
Well, I'm not sure if you can it's small. I try to raise it bigger, but you're talking about is what a smart move is.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Oh, you can't see my screen? Okay, so on the screen.
I can see it. I can see it, but I'm just saying, what is the question?
Okay, got you. According to this meme, we don't know if it's actually true that if he actually plans to donate his actual salary over the next 4 years, in a sense, that is a smart move, specifically in reference to homeless veterans, because that's something that he's always pushed, right? He's always campaigned on taking care of veterans.
Yeah, Trump is definitely not taking a salary because he didn't take one in 2016. So he's definitely not doing it. He doesn't need the money. Understand that every other president we've had, they came into the presidency regular dudes, like a senator or governor, maybe six figures. Maybe they wrote a book or two, but these are not rich people. It's when they leave, they become rich. So Trump is really the first guy that has come into office as a successful, very well-off businessman. So he doesn't need whatever the salary is for the president of the United States. He doesn't need that money. So he did it in 2016. He'd do it again this year. Putting it for homeless veterans, it's a genius move, but it's not something, it's it's easy for him to do. And I applaud him for doing it. And it's what's more interesting to me is when, a Barack Obama gets out of office and signs a deal with Netflix for 20 something, $30 million. And people don't think that came from deals that were cut when he was president. He's just getting broke off on the back end. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of interesting to me that people will say, well, Trump enriches himself. Well, they all do. It's just that this guy already has money. You know what I mean? So the enrichment part is negligible at best. But I mean, I don't fault the guy for becoming president of the United States and enriches himself from doing it. I don't begrudge them. If I'm not going to begrudge Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and the rest of them for doing it, when AOC came into office, her net worth was like in the 5 figures. Now she's a millionaire. And she's only been in Congress making 6 figures a year. How do you become a millionaire? So, all of these people are making money, and we should expect it. Is it right? I don't think it's right, but it's the natural way of things.
Nah, and that's what we've been highlighting, right? We played a couple of cuts. What was the Senator Murphy we played email earlier?
Mm-hmm. That was Senator Murphy. That was good.
And I just want to highlight the brilliance of this real email because it blew my mind. So as again, for our listeners, anytime that I play a cut, it's the first time Emille, who's our political consultant, and Shelley, they're seeing it for the first time, if you will. And so I played a cut where Senator Murphy was highlighting the ongoing oligarchy. How about Emille already knew what his net worth was and what it has gotten to in his 9 years of presidency, like on the spot. He didn't know I was going to play the cut. Because there, to your point, Shelley, we're highlighting both sides all do this, if you will. And I thought it was so brilliant that you actually knew that information. And I just shown you the cut live on the air on Emille. So I wanted to highlight that. Yeah. Let's go ahead and jump to another cut that's highlighting, again, this quote unquote oncoming oligarchy and get both of your perspectives on this, if you will. And so this is none other than Donna
An
Brazil.
Interesting development that may have changed the calculation a little bit today, that we found out that Trump, our would-be strongman, is in a sense answerable to a bigger strongman, not Vladimir Putin, Elon Musk, who also allegedly, at least according to reports, has lots of conversations with Putin. What does that do to the calculation on how Americans should deal with Trump?
Yeah, I think that's a very good place to start. I wrote a piece a few weeks ago called The Submission Chain, where I tried to explain that voters might like Trump, but Trump is submissive with respect to Musk, and Musk in return is submissive with respect to Putin. So if you vote for Trump, you're voting for the little guy who admires a bigger guy, who in turn admires a still bigger guy. And that's what we've got now. We've got this cluster of oligarchs, some domestic, some half domestic, some foreign, who are the real power in our country. So in terms of how to resist, I think you have to start by doing what you were doing in the last segment, which is name it for what it is, which is an international oligarchy.
Shelley, any thoughts?
Can we curse on this show?
Absolutely. Don't go overboard with it though, but yes.
No, that's a bunch of BS. I mean, it really is. It's a bunch of BS. And let me say this first, all right? I think that MSNBC writ large, Joy Reid especially, they have to be very careful, because if they spend every moment of their broadcast airtime literally just going after Trump and everything Trumpism, they're going to be out of business very fast. They're losing ratings already, and they're not losing ratings because the left doesn't agree with them anymore. They're losing ratings because everything they're pushing turns out to be a lie. And so people don't mind you sharing your opinions, but if constantly those opinions turn out not to be just incorrect, but just outright lies, people, they don't trust you anymore. And so what happens is you lose your base of listeners, and that's what we're seeing with MSNBC and CNN. The fact of the matter is, the reason why Trump and Musk have become tight, one, Trump is a type of dude that respects successful people. It's why he was very popular with rappers, and it's why he hung out with people in the rap community, entertainment field. It's why when he first got elected in 2016, he welcomed Kanye and Steve Harvey to Trump Tower because they had come up from really nothing and become very successful. And Trump he's not the type of person that sees black guy, white guy, Hispanic guy, whatever. He just sees successful guy, up from nothing, pulled himself up, made a lot of money, very successful. That's what he sees. And that's his calculus. And so with Musk, he sees a kindred spirit. And here's a kindred spirit with Musk and Trump vis-a-vis the Joy Reids of the world. Trump sees or saw that Elon Musk was beloved by people like Joy Reid when he started Tesla and he started SpaceX. They loved Elon Musk. He was once man of the year because of his e-cars and electric vehicles, and he's going to save the planet, and they love this guy. Then all of a sudden, when he started to drift rightward, when he bought Twitter, and when he bought Twitter, he wasn't any right-leaning conservative by any stretch of the imagination. When he bought Twitter, he was just saying, yo, people are being, speech is being subverted here. That's not a good thing. I'm going to buy it. Then all of a sudden, the left turned on him. The same way in which when Trump wasn't a Republican running for president, they liked Donald Trump. But then all of a sudden he came down a golden staircase, ran as a Republican, and all of a sudden these people turned on him and hated him. People, not the regular people, I'm talking about people who are running in his circles. And so I think there's that tie-in, that kind of kindred spirit type with Elon Musk. Now, does Elon Musk have a lot of good ideas? I'm sure he does. Also, you got to recognize about Trump, he came in as an outsider. Elon Musk is an outsider. Now, taking the conversation away from the oligarchy conversation, Elon Musk is an outsider. Although he makes vast billions and billions of dollars from the government, which kind of makes him kind of not an outsider, but politically he is an outsider because that money he's gotten from the government came under Republicans and Democrats. So, you know, he does get his money from the government, but he's still a political outsider. And what we're seeing is the reaction from the media, from the Joy Reids of the world, who are just propping up the other side of the oligarchy. That's all they're doing, right? And they're outraged because let's say Doge works. Let's say Trump has a successful administration. Let's say things get fixed. Let's say education outcomes become better. Then what the people will see is that, oh, I don't need a lifelong politician to fix political problems. I just need a person with common sense willing to do the work to fix the problems. And so that's the fear from the Joy Reids of the world, not for her, but for the apparatus that she's literally propping up on a nightly basis. I've lost a lot of respect. I'll end here, guys. The reason why I respect Emille is because Emille has an idea, thought, political, and opinion based on what he thinks. Same as me. We get no benefit, plus or minus, from saying what we say, right? And so what I've lost a lot of respect for the Roland Martins of the world, the Joy Reids of the world, the Abby Phillips of the world, the Caitlin Collins of the world. I've lost a lot of respect for them because they're literally propping up an apparatus from one side. And if you're honest, the apparatus in and of itself has been destructive to all of us, no matter what side of the fence we're on. And so the people that are propping up this apparatus and just attacking the other side, I just feel is dangerous. And I would say the same thing to a Sean Hannity. Sean Hannity will go on the air. He's on my station. He'll go on the air and defend something Trump does, but Obama did the same thing and you attacked it then. I think it's all makes you less credible, but it also, more importantly, makes the people less likely to be engaged in this because they see it all as a game, as entertainment. And that's why I kind of do my show differently, because I want to be that guy. Yes, I'm on the right. I'm decidedly on the right. I'm decidedly pro-Trump. But if during the time I'm kind of leery about this Musk relationship, I wouldn't call it what that guy called it, but I'm leery of it. You know what I mean? I don't want you to get too close unless you're going to say I'm stepping away from all my contracts that I'm getting from the government. But I'm a little leery of that. And I can be straight up. Conservatives would have been super leery if Elon Musk would have had a closer relationship to Joe Biden as he has to Donald Trump. So, let's be clear here and let's be fair here.
Yeah, that's what politically conscious is, right? It's just to have a dialogue and let people hear it for what it is. The propaganda exists for certain reasons, and it works, unfortunately, right? Propaganda works, unfortunately. And so we're just trying to weed through it and give real perspective. Emille, anything on what you just heard? And I'm going to share with y'all a piece that I saw in reference to the relationship that Shelley just talked about with Elon and Trump that I want to get y'all response to, and we'll end the show. But go ahead and give your response to everything you just saw.
Shelley and I will disagree because I think that Fox News is the weight or counterweight to MSNBC, and that they do the exact same thing. They tell half-truths to support their side and their perspective. And the difference is that MSNBC and CNN compete with one another for roughly the same viewers. Fox has no competition on the right, serious competition. I'm on One American News Network and a couple of others, but none of them are the juggernaut that Fox is. And so when people are looking at propaganda, they want to see something that allows them to get a feel for what is important. And unfortunately, one side is able to push a very specific line of logic, and the other side is trying to counter that, not saying that either side is right, because there's something, they're both not telling the truth. But one side, MSNBC and CNN, they've got a lot of competition, and they got to figure out how they're going to win that competition. Fox doesn't have to work as hard on that competition. They've got a very ideological base. That base has rocked with them through some known lies that they had to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to settle. So when we're talking about propaganda, we have to be 100% clear that both sides are engaging in a very propagandistic form of communication, very much trying to make you believe that one side is bad and the other side is good. These guys are villains and these guys are heroes. These guys will save you. These guys will ruin you. When in fact, neither side has to their advantage to actually ruin America. Neither side has to its advantage to actually undermine the average working individual. But what has happened, in my opinion, is these very wealthy Americans have made it a point that they can grow their wealth faster than the average American can grow their income. Now, I'm going to say that again because you got to hear it clearly. The wealthiest Americans believe they can grow their wealth faster than the average American can grow their income. The average American is not accumulating wealth, and certainly not at any pace relative to the wealthiest Americans are growing their wealth. This is a problem. Because if we don't get, and I was recently watching a 10-year-old YouTube video by Nick Hanauer, who's a multi-billionaire out of Seattle. And he said, if these billionaires do not figure out how to make it more fair for the average American, the pitchforks are coming. And the problem is that you're seeing Elon Musk able to wield what seems like, on the surface, an unfair advantage toward his agenda than the average American ever could. And that is what will create a problem for most people. And so now you see the propaganda on one side, MSNBC and those like it are saying it's an oligarchy, it's bad, without recognizing that we've been here for a long time. And the other side is saying, look how good America's going to be with these billionaires helping us figure out what an efficient government looks like. And neither side is really appealing to the average American's ability to navigate their financial future by growing their income as fast as or faster than these wealthy Americans are growing their wealth.
Yeah, obviously we just lost Shelley again. I had a direct question to him in reference to, because if I listen to you clearly, Emille, I don't even know, and I hope that people can hear what I'm about to say, is we can't even assume that because a billionaire that the direction is going to be bad. Like you said with the YouTuber that you highlighted, saying if these billionaires don't figure it out. So there is hope for some, and probably based on which political affiliation you have, that those decisions will be good decisions, if you will. And so there is a possibility that Elon being this close could make us more efficient based on his knowledge, his background. And so I'm not assuming it one way or the other. And that's also add to the leeriness, if that makes sense, right? It'll add to the leeriness if you just assume bad because of because of billionaire, right? If you assume bad simply because of billionaire status, then you're gonna, no matter what propaganda is sent to you by either side, you're just gonna have probably an unwise take because, like Shelley said, hey, he's leery of it, but you also hope that good decisions can be made too. I just want to make sure that people take that context out of what we're saying here, that you don't lean one way or the other because of propaganda. You kind of have to see some things play out, is all I'm saying. Go ahead, Emille.
I agree. I'll say this real quick. If you go back to Henry Ford, one of the things he said was, I want my workers to afford the cars they build so that I can make more money. It was a very self-centered way of seeing the world, but I loved it because it was a very clear understanding that if I squeeze every penny out of my workers, not only will they not be able to afford some of the nice things that they're making, but I might be in jeopardy because they might turn on me. I will have a harder time with building a workforce that is loyal. And from that, you had company towns. GE ran several company towns that supported its workers.
Real quick,
healthcare.
Very quick now.
Right. So just because it's a billionaire, to your point, doesn't mean it's a bad decision. I don't care if they have $1 billion or not. I care, does the average American, especially Black people in America, we really have a benefit from those decisions?
Right. And so that's something that has to play out. So let me share a little bit of what I was about to share with y'all. This is something that a good friend of mine who now lives outside the United States feels like kind of has an international perspective. He said some things, and I was wondering if either of y'all would be concerned with this. Anybody who knows me personally, I don't consider myself a conspiracy theorist, if you will. So I don't necessarily jump on conspiracy theories very quickly, if you will. I like to kind of see them played out in reality before I jump on one. And so this brother just kind of gives his perspective. I consider him relatively apolitical. So if y'all are bear with me for a few minutes to read through some of this, but I want to get your take on some of his questions, because to give y'all context, I wonder if some of his thoughts are fair for us as the American people. He's still a U.S. citizen, lives outside the United States. He says Elon Musk company Tesla announced they were going to start working on humanoid robots in 2021. That was only nearly 3 years ago. 3 years. Keep that in mind. It takes several decades for technology of this level to usually be developed and released. We now have fully operable Tesla humanoid robots in the market available for purchase. The Chinese have been working on humanoid robots for the last 15 years with respectable research institutions, their governments, and their brilliant robotic minds behind the development. The U.S. owes China over $1 trillion in debt. The U.S. and China are naturally suspicious, competitive, and highly cynical of each other. Both countries have an extensive history of running spy campaigns on each other. They are obviously competing for the ultimate seat of power against each other. The U.S. has had an abnormally high amount of data breaches the last few years, whereas even U.S. citizen Social Security numbers in the hundreds of millions have been exposed. Elon Musk is a white South African who doesn't express much pride in his roots. In fact, he is on record of being highly critical of the politics in South Africa. Elon Musk is also at war with his own father. Many would argue his father is arguably a psychopath based on his history of doing disturbing things to others. Elon Musk has been divorced 3 times. Elon Musk is due to being granted an official high-ranking government position by Trump to make the government run more efficiently. One of Elon Musk's children has crossed over to trans against his wishes, and he blames the woke virus, his words, and the child's mothers for tricking him into signing paperwork that consented to the child undergoing the necessary hormonal changes in operations to cross over. This demonstrates a history that Elon Musk tends to have very problematic and hostile domestic relationships with his roots, romantic life, and governments. The instability of his marriages and families also demonstrate an inability to keep a hold and handle on things under his leadership. No, I don't say this from a place of judgment. I say it with humility and for the purpose of highlighting a much more important point, because we are all guilty to some degree of falling short. He says his pattern of behavior also demonstrates that he is loyal to himself, only to himself, due to trauma. This is an important fact, given the fact of his high-ranking position to corporate America and government and the sheer dominance of the technology he rules over like a humanoid AI robot. Here's the questions. He says, my point, is it possible the Tesla robots are or can be controlled by the Chinese at any moment? 2, is it possible that Elon Musk and the Chinese are engaged in a secret contract? 3, is it possible the Chinese are deliberately creating data breaches in the U.S. to destabilize the economy, create misinformation, confusion? 4, last one, is it possible the Chinese have successfully infiltrated and invaded the U.S.? Are those fair questions from his perspective outside looking in? Shelley, I'll start with you, and Emille give you the last thought.
I mean, everything is fair. I mean, you can bring up anything. You could tie anything into it. He dated Amber Heard. Amber Heard is no great person herself. She went after Johnny Depp. Elon Musk has kids with different mothers. If I'm a billionaire, God bless me, I'd be having kids with different mothers too. Nick Cannon is a millionaire and he's got the kids with different mothers. So I mean, look, let me tell you, one of the most dangerous things is to be a quote unquote psychologist when you're not, and try and get in the heads of other people publicly and make it sound like it makes sense. I mean, it really is silly. It's a silly game to play. Am I afraid of the Chinese influence on American infrastructure? Absolutely, I am. Am I afraid of the relationships between Joe Biden and the Democrats and the Chinese? Absolutely. Am I afraid of what the Chinese can do with all of these hacks? Absolutely. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. This idea that it's all going to be on Elon Musk if it happens, I'm just not that guy. I'm really not. I wasn't that guy for people that were tight with, I'm just not that guy. You know what I mean? The two countries, the fact that what throws everything he wrote about out of the window is the fact that we owe them trillions of dollars. If we were really such enemies to each other, we wouldn't be borrowing money and they wouldn't be lending us money. We'd be going under because you don't borrow money. Your enemy doesn't lend you money if they're really your enemy, right? The same kind of conversations we were having in the 80s when the Japanese were buying up all the real estate and buying up all the companies, and everybody was saying, oh, the Japanese, they're going to take over America. They were just businessmen investing in a great country. And so I'm going to say to your friend, with all due respect, I think you roped together a whole bunch of stuff to make the point you wanted to get at already. Be afraid of Elon. Because when he was building Tesla out, these are cars now are nothing but computers. So the robots are nothing but computers as well. I drive a car right now. When I got this car, they told me it takes gas, but it's nothing but one big computer. That's it. From the steering to the radio to everything in this car, it's a computer. If something breaks on this car, it can pretty much be fixed by fixing a computer. And so, that's the life we live in now. I don't agree with selling TikTok because it's owned by the Chinese. I'm more afraid of my own government and companies in America buying my data than I'm afraid of the Chinese having my data, because all the Chinese are going to realize about me when they get Shelley's information is, damn, this dude watches a lot of porn. That's all they're going to get with me. So he's broke and he watches a lot of porn. Okay, he's no threat to us. So it just really is. I think, to your friend, with all due respect, but it's a whole lot of words really saying nothing but fear mongering.
Emille, your thoughts? Again, I'm only sharing just from the context because that example of what I just shared, again, it's not about, again, whether I agree or disagree, but it is the type of thing that will go on, right? When the propaganda kind of leads the way, that type of thing will come out and people will run with it. And so I just wanted to hear your thoughts to hearing it as well. Again, I'm not indicting my friend whatsoever. Again, much respect, to that brother or whatever. So I want to make sure I'm making that very clear. However, I just brought it to the context for politically conscious because this is the type of stuff people will do with the politics they see played out on TV, if that makes sense. For sure. Your thoughts, brother?
No, I mean, yeah, I'm concerned about China hacking our every telecommunications device known to mankind. I mean, they build them. We gave them the technology to build it. America's been cozy with China for the last 40 years since Nixon opened the door to the Chinese government. And we have figured out how to offload more and more of our manufacturing to them. under every president, under every administration, both sides. So, and here's the thing, China didn't hijack us for jobs. American businesses chose to go to China to put our manufacturing technology in their hands, and thereby giving them a leapfrog over 2 generations of trial and error in order to become what they are today. Let's be very comfortable saying that, because it's true. It didn't matter who was president. They were opening doors and they were hitting the buttons to make free trade. The free trade agreements went back and forth. Sometimes the Democrats were like, oh no, free trade is bad. And then other times Republicans, oh no, free trade is bad. It's been back and forth for the past 25 years since NAFTA. So I am not convinced that Elon Musk is all bad. I am not convinced that he is in bed with China. Now, I am certainly not convinced that China without Elon Musk is somehow worse or better. China is a nation of 1.5 billion people. They have their own mind, their own agenda, their own economy, and they will figure out whatever it takes to advance China's interests. Why would they limit themselves to Musk because he's the world's richest man on paper? Okay, so they did that. But if it was somebody else, they would use them potentially. So I don't look at China as being something other than a nation of 1.5 billion people with its own agenda and nothing more. And whoever they can employ to advance that agenda, they will employ them.
And you won't hear what you just heard from both of our political analysts here anywhere else. That's why we're politically conscious. And I'll add a little more context because y'all know I'm a numbers guy or whatever. So just to let you know how much propaganda and fear mongering happens, we actually owe Japan $1 trillion, not China, just to kind of put that in perspective. It's about 777 billion that we actually owe Trump. And while those numbers sound so looming and so large, both those numbers are less than 2% of the debt that we owe, because most of our debt is owned by our government to the American people. And so when you hear the number alone, $1 trillion that we owe Japan, it sounds like, oh, we're obligated to them. No, most of our money is owed for the bonds that they give to us as American people. And I always have to put that number in context, because when you hear the number alone, it sounds like we're beholden to that country. But to both of your point, you're not borrowing money from each other if you in fact are one full-fledged enemies, to Shelley's point. Great point. And then I just wanted to put the $1 trillion number in context before you think we're obligated to this other country. That's not a large number when you actually realize the actual debt that's owed in our country. So that's the last bit of context I wanted to add. Thank y'all both for adding to Politically Conscious. We'll pop up and do this again. If you will, Shelley, let people know how they can tune into you, brother, because I know you have a public show. We want to make sure that people know how to tune in. Go ahead, brother.
Yes, I'm on the air, 95.5 FM, WSB Radio in Atlanta, Georgia, WSBradio.com. You can listen every night, 7 to 9 p.m. Be back on the air after this holiday week, Monday to 6. So please check me out. Talk about everything.
All right. Thank y'all, brothers. Emille, anything you want to pop out? Just making sure.
If you want to learn more about me, myname.com, you see it on the screen, or find me on LinkedIn. Again, my name is all you need. I don't care much about anything other than telling the truth and cut through this propaganda. So I always appreciate you, Montoya, for inviting me and Shelley on to do just that.
If you're tired of the propaganda, listen to us. Holler at y'all till we pop up again. Appreciate y'all. Stay on real quick, y'all. I'm about to just stop the show. Keep y'all on.